So I'm curious, John, love what you had to say today. Please explain to us how we're going to go about this. First, no party will touch the Constitution, the Charter, equalization, everything connected to it, bilingualism. No leader running for any party will touch this. All of these people running for the Conservative Party right now won't discuss equalization, bilingualism, the Charter. What do we do? Where do we turn to? How do we get somebody to discuss this openly that's running for one of these parties?
That is an excellent question, and yes, we're looking up from the bottom of the deep hole. And I want to quote Ralph Klein, who's often as a hero of conservatism, but he once said, "Show me a big enough parade and I'll get in front of it." And what we need to do, we need to create a parade. And we need to understand, the late Andrew Breitbart used to say this a lot, politics is downstream of culture. And that is why when I make these documentaries, I always tell this long historical tale with Alfred the Great and Canute. But I'm going to tell the Canute story again. I think maybe you know it by now, especially if you've heard me talk, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So Canute is a Danish king of England in the 11th century. He's one of these interlopers, but he's a good king. And he's famous for having thought he could stop the tide. But that is a slander on Canute. For 1,000 years in the English-speaking world, this story was told properly at dinner tables, not in legislatures. Canute was being told by his courtiers that he was such a mighty king, such a great man, such a favorite of God himself, that he could command the waves. And so Canute said, gee, there's a theory worth testing empirically. They weren't all superstitious fools in the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. He said, carry my chair down at low tide and place it on the mudflat. And they took his chair down, he sat down there when the waves came, and he said, I, Canute, command you to halt. And of course, salt water poured into his boots. And then he turned to his courtiers and said, you flattering hacks, don't tell me I can stop the tide. I'm the king. I get all sorts of ridiculous compliments all the time for free. You have to tell me what I can't do. You have to tell me what I'm doing wrong. How else can I govern properly? And remember that only God commands the waves. So this was a story about humility. And this was something that was understood through the English-speaking world, like the story of King Alfred and the Cakes. We need to take back the story of who we are so that our politics changes. And we need to, I have a dog in this fight, share the documentary, encourage people to start talking about the Constitution, because the politicians will never lead on this one. They don't want trouble. Justin Trudeau may do us a favor by kicking the hornet's nest in Sault Ste. You know, he's raising questions like, if we're going to change the voting system, can we really do it without a referendum? If they try, I think there'll be a lot of pushback. If there's a referendum, I think it'll be voted down. And some people have done something very important. Will have stood up and said, in this political culture, in this free society, we decide how we elect MPs. Yes. We use first-class proposals. Simone de Montfort summoned his model parliament in 1265, and the commoners were in there for the first time. And you will not take it away from us as some sociologist's project. But we need to be unembarrassed to say this is a free society. In our next documentary, which will be out in a month, fingers crossed, is on Canadians' right to bear arms. It's like I wasn't unpopular enough. I didn't have this weirdo aura sufficiently. So I decided to say, Canadians have always had the right to self-defense. We have something like the 13th highest rate of private firearms ownership in the world. And we are not idiots or maniacs. We are not prevented from shooting one another only by a law that says we have to keep the bullets somewhere other than the gun. And we need to stop letting people say that we are. We got to stand up. What have we got to lose? We're already regarded as ridiculous. Let's be ridiculous and loud, right? Let's take back our culture. My friend John Packard has talked about this. How is it possible that Israel was recreated after 1,870 years in exile? You know, there were no Assyrians in the streets of New York, right? If Canadians were dispersed by some great calamity, you'd never put us back together 2 millennia hence based on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But in exile, for those 19 long centuries, Jewish mothers and fathers told their children the story of their people at the dining room table. And that's where it has to happen. That we need to make sure that the conversation in our own homes reminds us that, like I talked about this today in the documentary, Robin Hood. We all know about Robin Hood, right? And in the mature Robin Hood legend, he is an opponent of Bad King John. Why? Because Bad King John was trying to take away the rights of free people. And what does Robin Hood do? He takes up arms. That's our story. story. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. I'm old enough to call them boys now, who went off to the 2 world wars. What were they fighting for? Freedom. You asked them, they just said that. We are fighting for freedom. Because that's the defining mark of a Canadian. And we've got to stand up and say this, and not be rude about it. You know, I'm delighted that Hillary Clinton lost the American presidential election. I'm not happy that Donald Trump won it because he is an extremely ill-mannered person, among other things. We need to be polite, but we need to be firm and say, I'm a free man and I wear it as a badge of honor. I will repeat that once again. The website is fixtheconstitution.ca, and then there's a place you can follow from there, and it's new-constitution. But if you just go to fixtheconstitution.ca, you'll find the draft document there. It's the Toastmasters plaque that says get out.
This is well day, John. And at the back there, make sure before you go, that everyone gets a free disc here. True, Strong, and Free, John Robson's 1982 Constitution, in full. It's at the back. Make sure you grab one when you go to leave. We're going to take a 5-minute